Death Valley is the hottest place on Earth, the lowest point in North America, a landscape so hostile that early pioneers who crossed it gave it a name that was both description and warning. But the valley's reputation for lethality doesn't just come from its temperatures, which can exceed 130 degrees Fahrenheit. It comes from the people who enter and never come out, the ones who vanish under circumstances that investigation after investigation has failed to explain. Since systematic record-keeping began in 1949, at least 47 people have disappeared in Death Valley under conditions that authorities describe, in language that becomes remarkably consistent across decades and jurisdictions, as anomalous, not lost, not victims of predictable desert dangers, anomalous, as if something in that valley defies the normal rules of cause and effect. Lock your doors, put on your headphones, because after this video, you'll understand why some investigators refuse to return to Death Valley, no matter what they're offered. The first case is still discussed in hushed tones among Inyo County Sheriff's deputies, even though it happened in 1971. Dr. James Keller was a professor of geology at UCLA, an experienced desert researcher who had conducted fieldwork in Death Valley more than 30 times. On August 14th, he drove his university vehicle to a site near Ubahabi Crater to collect rock samples, a routine trip he had made many times before. He was expected back at his motel in Furnace Creek by 6 p.m. When he didn't return by midnight, the motel manager called authorities. Search and rescue teams located his vehicle the following morning. The engine was still running. The door was open. His water, his equipment, his wallet, his keys. Everything was still inside. The only thing missing was Dr. Keller. Here's where the case becomes impossible. The ground around the vehicle was soft enough to hold footprints. Investigators found Dr. Keller's prints leading away from the driver's side door. They followed them for exactly 147 meters across the desert floor. And then the prints stopped. Not gradually. Not near rock where they might have been obscured. They simply stopped, mid-stride, as if he had been lifted directly off the ground. Search dogs were brought in within hours. Professional tracking animals that had located missing persons dozens of times in similar terrain. Every single dog refused to track beyond the point where the footprints ended. They whined. They circled. One reportedly lay down and wouldn't move until physically carried away from the site. Dr. Keller's body was never found. His case was never solved. And the investigator who led the search, a 20-year veteran of desert rescue operations, requested transfer to administrative duties and never conducted another field search. When asked why, he reportedly said, "Because something took that man, and the first don't want to be there when it comes back for someone else." The second case occurred in 1988 and involved a family of 4 from Sacramento. The Hernandez family, parents and 2 children, aged 9 and 12, were driving through Death Valley as part of a summer road trip when their vehicle was found abandoned near Badwater Basin. The circumstances matched Dr. Keller's case with disturbing precision. Engine running, doors open, all belongings present. But there was one crucial difference. The Hernandez family left footprints. 4 sets, walking parallel, heading east toward the Salt Flats. Deputies followed the tracks for over 2 miles across terrain that should have been impossible to walk in summer heat. The footprints showed no signs of stumbling, no signs of distress. All 4 family members appeared to have been walking calmly, deliberately, toward a destination only they could see. The tracks ended at the edge of a salt formation known locally as the Devil's Golf Course. Beyond that point, the crystallized salt was too hard to hold impressions, but here's the thing. The direction they were walking led to nothing. No road, no water, no shelter, nothing but 40 miles of the most hostile terrain in North America. A massive search operation involving helicopters, ground teams, and thermal imaging equipment covered over 200 square miles. Nothing was found. No bodies, no clothing, no physical evidence of any kind. It was as if the Hernandez family had walked into the desert and simply ceased to exist. What makes people walk calmly into a landscape that should terrify them? The third case is one that investigators still argue about, because the evidence contradicts itself. In 2003, a German tourist named Klaus Reinhardt was traveling alone through Death Valley when he pulled his rental car off Highway 190 near Stovepipe Wells. Security camera footage from a nearby gas station shows him purchasing water and snacks at 2:34 p.m. He appeared calm, relaxed, in no apparent distress. His rental car was found the next morning, parked neatly beside the road with the hazard lights flashing. His phone was on the dashboard, showing a text message he had been typing but never sent. The message read, "Something in the rocks is." The sentence was never finished. Search teams found his footprints leading toward a formation known as the Devil's Cornfield, a cluster of arrowweed plants that grow in the harsh alkaline soil. The prints were clear and consistent for approximately 800 meters. Then, they were joined by a second set of prints. Here's the problem. The second set of prints didn't come from anywhere. They appeared suddenly beside Klaus's tracks, as if whoever made them had simply materialized out of the desert air. And from that point forward, both sets of prints walked together, side by side, for another 200 meters before both stopped simultaneously. When forensic analysts examined the second set of prints, they found something that made no physical sense. The prints were human in shape and proportion, but the depth and pressure distribution suggested a weight of approximately 400 pounds, nearly 3 times what any human could weigh while still leaving prints of that size. Klaus Reinhardt was never found. The German consulate requested a full investigation. The Inyo County Sheriff's Department complied but concluded that the case was unsolvable with current forensic methodology. The file remains open. Both cases the only one where someone came back. And what he reported has never been officially acknowledged. In 2011, a hiker named David Chen set out on a solo trek through the remote Panamint Range on the western edge of Death Valley. He was experienced, well-equipped, and had filed a detailed trip plan with park rangers. When he failed to check in at his scheduled time, search operations began within hours. David was found 3 days later, 18 miles from where his last known position should have placed him, sitting beside a dry wash with his eyes open but unresponsive. He was severely dehydrated, but otherwise uninjured. Medical examination revealed no signs of head trauma, no substances in his system, no physical explanation for his condition. When he recovered enough to speak, David described an experience that investigating officers noted in their report, but subsequently redacted from all public releases. According to sources who read the original document before its classification, David claimed to have been taken inside the mountain by beings he described as made of light and sound. He said he was shown things about the valley's history, things about what had happened to other missing people, things about what the valley actually was. He said the beings told him he would be returned because he had been brought by accident. Others, they explained, had been called. David Chen spent 6 weeks in psychiatric observation following his rescue. He was eventually released with a diagnosis of acute stress-induced psychosis. He has never publicly discussed his experience, but according to friends who stayed in contact with him, he has never returned to the desert, and he sleeps with the lights on, every night, without exception. The 5th case occurred in 2017 and remains the most forensically puzzling. A search and rescue volunteer named Maria Santos disappeared during an operation to locate a missing hiker in the racetrack playa area. Maria was experienced in radio contact and operating in a coordinated team with clear sight lines. At 4:17 p.m., she reported seeing unusual movement near the playa's southeastern edge and announced she was investigating. Her teammates confirmed her position via radio. She was approximately 300 meters away, clearly visible against the pale surface of the dried lakebed. At 4:19 p.m., she vanished, not gradually, not behind an obstruction. Her teammates watched her disappear. One described it as like a TV switching off. One moment she was there, the next, she wasn't. Search teams reached her last position within 3 minutes. They found her equipment, her radio, her pack, all arranged neatly in a small pile as if she had carefully removed them before vanishing. But they didn't find Maria, and when forensic analysts examined the site, they discovered something that still has no explanation. The ground around Maria's equipment showed no footprints. None. Not even her own. It was as if she had hovered above the surface the entire time she was there, then simply stopped existing. Maria Santos has never been found. The investigation remains officially open, and the racetrack playa, already famous for its mysterious moving stones, now carries an additional layer of mystery that rangers don't discuss with visitors. The sixth and final case might be the most recent, or it might still be happening. In October 2023, a group of amateur astronomers set up equipment in a remote section of the park to photograph the Orion Nebula. They were experienced desert campers who had obtained proper permits and registered their vehicle and location with park authorities. At 11:43 p.m., one member of the group used their satellite communicator to send a message to a friend. "There's light in the valley. Not stars, something else. Going to investigate." It was the last communication anyone received from the group. When park rangers checked on them the following morning, they found the campsite intact. Equipment in place, vehicles present, food still in coolers, and all 5 members of the group gone without trace. The subsequent search was one of the largest in Death Valley history, involving federal resources and military aircraft. After 3 weeks, it was officially suspended. No bodies, no remains, no explanation. But here's what the official reports don't mention. Rangers who conducted the ground search in the area where the group had seen light in the valley reported their own anomalous experiences, equipment failures, unusual sounds. And one ranger, according to colleagues who spoke anonymously, reported seeing the silhouettes of figures standing on a ridge approximately 400 meters away, watching the search operation. When he raised his binoculars to get a better look, they were gone. The search was officially suspended due to lack of viable leads. Unofficially, according to sources within the investigation, it was suspended because searchers were becoming afraid to continue. What is Death Valley? A geographical formation? A hostile environment? Or something else entirely? Something ancient and aware? Something that has been taking people since long before we started keeping records? The Timbisha Shawnee people, who have lived in the region for over 1,000 years, have their own explanations. They speak of the valley as a place between worlds, a threshold that occasionally opens for reasons only the spirits understand. They don't enter certain areas of the valley. They never have the valley. And they've watched with something between sorrow and resignation as outsiders ignore their warnings and disappear, one by one, into a mystery they never should have approached. If you made it this far, thank you. 6 cases, 6 impossibilities, 6 families who will never know what happened to the people they loved. Death Valley is beautiful in its desolation, terrifying in its indifference. And somewhere in its depths something waits. Leave a like if this investigation stayed with you. Tell us which case disturbed you most. Subscribe to join us as we continue exploring the places where people vanish and explanations fail. But if you're ever in Death Valley, and you see lights in the distance that don't belong to any road or campsite, do what the Timbisha have always done. Turn around, walk away, and don't look back. Some invitations aren't meant to be accepted, and some mysteries aren't meant to be solved.